Alright everyone, first and foremost you may notice, yes indeed, anti-glare lenses, so hopefully that takes care of part of the problem of like screen reflection off of my glasses, and also the screen is anti-glare too, so it just sort of works out. But I do have to, I believe, have them readjusted because I don't think they're 100% on the angle at the moment. I think that they were put in just slightly wrong, so I'm going to be doing that today. So I'm having a little bit of trouble actually, like I was doing my editing and some of the letters were like, a little bit on the fuzzy side. I'm like, oh, that sucks. But we gotta talk about Google. Because there's a lawsuit now alleging that Google, not only does it maintain like a blacklist of employees that have said things that are, I guess, too far right. Like if someone said, make America great again, probably they'd be on this list. Not only is there an employee blacklist and they're like trying to complain to HR and they're like, what the fuck is this? This is, nonsense basically. But then they were actually talking about the idea of holding like trials, like witch hunt style trials. Oh, art thou a conservative? Art thou a populist? I guess would be basically what they'd be doing. And it's draconian, but it's not surprising. Anyone who's surprised that a big tech firm would have a certain political slant and then in the interior it would enforce it when it's dealing with communications technology, I think that would be a rather strange, naive way of thinking about corporations. This is why we need the action of the Constitution upon big tech, because such an inordinate proportion, and there's a separate lawsuit seeking, by the way, to do this right now, such a large proportion of communication now between humans takes place on a handful of internet-based sites. It's not like 2 decades ago when much of human communication was interpersonal or through literally snail mail. At most you had, a lot of people would use email, but you didn't have YouTube for human communication. You didn't have Facebook. Back then you didn't even have MySpace at that point. They didn't exist. You certainly didn't have Twitter. The kind of mobile capabilities you have now didn't exist at that time. You didn't have like text message in the modern sense. People would make a manual phone call with one or two other, you'd do a conference call maybe. Other than that, it was basically one person to one person. You have the bare rudiments of primitive IRC chat at that time, and that's literally the only sort of more in-depth communication at the time. Since then, in only 2 short decades, virtually all human interaction now happens in those more efficient modern ways. It's text messaging. Now, I personally hate text messaging. I prefer doing the manual phone call because oftentimes what I want to say won't fit in the text message, and I'm sitting there, it takes fucking 5 minutes to get the point across when I could just make a call, get it across in 30 seconds or less. For me, it's more efficient as someone, I guess I talk faster than I type, so it's all good. But more people, they use text messages. You got Skype and Discord, that sort of thing. You have various chatting apps. You have also online chat, which is dying off. I say that's a bad thing because trolling them is more fun than trolling something app-related. And that's the world of today. And people have their social media profiles. They message. Like Facebook at this point is basically a messaging app. Nobody uses any other main function of Facebook anymore. Nobody in the younger generations even joins Facebook for anything other than Messenger, apparently. So Facebook's going to have to totally transform itself. They'll have to have some other social media sort of thing that's not profile-based over time. YouTube is used by an inordinate proportion of the population, of the entire developed world, increasingly by the developing world eventually. Now, it's going to be common in the third world. You mark my words, it will. Video hosting will be branching out to increasingly less affluent areas as it becomes more efficient over time. As energy production becomes more efficient as well, and servers and things of that nature. It will happen. It's going to be quite wonderful. The internet's still got plenty of room to grow. Look, you can double the internet in size over the next 10 years quite easily. It's not a stretch to envision that. There's also room, by the way, assuming that we apply anti-monopoly laws for 3 or 4 other big companies to emerge in that top group. It doesn't have to be the big 4. It could be the big 10 or something like that. That alone brings just a little sliver of competition between them as long as there's no, sort of inter-technological nepotism going on that we could enforce. But I'm not surprised in the least that Google would do such a thing. It just makes sense. They're also, you got to understand, looking out for their economic best interests. Look, in the sense of the United States, U.S. law being what, informs a company like Google. Google is a U.S. firm. It's like Facebook and Apple. They're U.S. firms. Apple, most of its employees are in China, but it's basically a U.S. firm. And I don't know if it pays full U.S. taxes. Tim Cook there is one of those crazy, he's like Steve Jobs, really, really self-righteous and acid-soaked. He didn't take the good acid, apparently. He didn't gain enlightenment. He became basically a total corporate shill and sellout. And then he talks about meditation, how wonderfully enlightened it makes his employees. What a goofball. It's really funny to see that. Sorry, that's off topic. But you've got to understand here, in the sense of the U.S., the Democrats are the corporate party now, not the Republicans. Which means, naturally, Google, as a big corporation that wants to throw its weight around in a political sense, who the fuck do you think they're going to favor? Of course they're going to favor the Democrats. That means, by the way, getting dragged along with the Democrats' stupid wedge issues, as long as they persist in thinking that's a good electoral strategy. Which means more censorship on sites like Google and Facebook. Look, none of these groups favor a conservative movement. They don't want a real... they'll tolerate the neocons. And of course, they're not conservative in nature. They're not going to tolerate a populist movement. Look, they have to use overseas labor in order to make ends meet, or they think they do, like Amazon. A lot of offshoring. Apple, the most offshored company of all. Amazon looks like a 100% made in USA, red, white, and blue, tried and true company next to Apple. Apple's the worst of all. And so I boycott their products for a reason. That and their overpriced fucking garbage. If you're using Apple products, make the switch. Trust me, you'll like other things more. For the cost of a mid-end Apple laptop, you can get a high-end Alienware that'll totally outperform the Crapple product and actually do things that you want it to do. I don't know why you wouldn't make the switch. People who talk about viruses, okay, get Avast and super anti-spyware running side by side. That's all you need. If you're trying to use McAfee, yeah, you're probably going to get a virus. Oh yeah, I use Norton. Wonderful. Yeah, don't blame me when your computer stops working, by the way, folks. It's just not going to happen. Get spyware doctor, some of that stuff. What's it called? Bit Muncher or something like that. Carpet Muncher. I'm just joking. Malwarebytes is the actual name. Yeah, you've got all of these different companies. They favor the Democratic Party, so they're going to go along with the bottom line of the Democratic talking points. It's not even necessarily like you think the Google CEO really cares which party's in power for his own personal fiscal reasons. No, he doesn't care. He's getting his money either way. He doesn't care if his taxes go up 0.5% or they go down 0.5%. Here's the big thing. When people say, well, the Democrats are the party of the poor and working class and small businesses because they want to tax the rich more. No, they don't, because they know that the tax code, convoluted and bureaucratic as it is, with so much regulation and red tape and so many loopholes, is never going to affect them. It's only going to affect people who can't hire an army of lawyers and accountants. So they feel just fine. They don't care if you jack the tax rate up to 90%. Trust me, Bezos and all these others wouldn't pay that rate. It wouldn't happen. Most of their assets would be totally immune from paying a red cent. Then people will call them corrupt. It's like people act astonished that this happens. Says, oh, these evil corrupt corporation ads. No, it's not that. It's self-interest. It's self-interest. Look, if they can shimmy a little bit off the top, if they can scrape a little bit extra out of the barrel by using some loophole, they'd be dumb not to. I know I would. If I was making millions of dollars and the government's like, okay, you have to pay half your fucking salary back out, I'd say, oh, well, really? Maybe I can spend a fraction of that, hire an accountant to really, really weasel his way through my papers, put his own rubber stamp on it, and save me $1 million in taxes. Why wouldn't I? Nobody else is owed any of my money. No, it's mine. It's the result of my productivity. I never signed bullshit on a social contract. Fuck that. Never happened. Yeah, certainly not for a corrupt government that's going to take half that money and go bomb people. No thanks. I think I'll pay as little as possible. And it's not even illegal. It's not like, oh, yeah, I cheated on my taxes. I said I made less than I made. No, they just use an accountant. They say, oh, I can write this off. I can write that off. I can have a statement. This thing that has nothing to do with my job, kind of technically sort of has something to do with my job. It's aesthetic for my home, and I'm a CEO, so I need to relax, and so I need those yoga mats. They're an intrinsic part of my ability to perform my job. Okay, yeah, you can write that off, Mr. Cook. Nah, it's as simple as that. And they'll weasel their way, and then, of course, they got the army of lawyers, the only ones with enough money and enough legal power to stand up against maybe the IRS. You think that they're going to have to worry about getting audited? Well, that's not going to happen either, because they've paid off so many senators and congressmen. So they're golden. They can do what they want. But no, Google is going to look out for its self-interest. This is another thing we have to understand. Self-interest, individualism extend to the corporate world. We need to design policy with regards especially to communications technology with that in mind. So far we haven't. We just look at them and we say, well, there's some corruption there or some bias. Yes, but why is it there? What's the fundamental root cause and how can we prevent it from being abusive? I don't care if the CEO of Google wants to use a tax shelter. I really don't care, but I do care if Google, which contains an inordinate proportion of all human communication, biggest email site, biggest blog site, YouTube, biggest video hosting site, biggest search engine. I do care if they are unduly manipulating and censoring material to the point at which a now intrinsic and necessary function of all world trade is being stymied. That, for economic reasons alone, don't even talk about free speech or free expression for a moment. Just the economic side. Stifling someone who could be the next Albert Einstein, my goodness, you could rob the world of collective trillions of dollars very easily. Just through Google's actions. Amazon, same thing. You could do the same thing. Facebook, certainly. Twitter. Crapple. You know, not that Crapple's any good. As you can tell, I don't really like Crapple products. I don't really like them as a company. I see them as the bad guys, generally speaking. It was like that time they said, oh, we're not going to give the FBI access to this dude's smartphone because, you know, encryption. And then, of course, a little back door. It took them like 10 minutes to actually get into it. It's just that they wanted to rake them over the coals a little bit and have some fun. They knew how to get into the phone to begin with. It's bullshit that they couldn't. We then have O'Keefe today talking to Twitter's people. Senior engineer or something at Twitter saying, oh yeah, we have access to everything, including deleted stuff that people made. Well, yeah, that personally is like a no-shit scenario. Well, no shit, they have access to people's private messages. What did you expect? You think Facebook, YouTube, all these others don't? Of course they do. That itself isn't the problem. I think the problem there is that it would be used for political reasons. So far that hasn't really happened. A company would face a nightmarish scenario as far as PR goes if they did, so I think that hopefully prevents it. I think the worst thing that honestly could happen is some rogue employee gathers up a bunch of intel on people they politically dislike and then leaks it and manages to cover their tracks so it looks like the info is just hacked. Honestly, I think that's eventually going to happen with some of these big companies. By the way, the first company it happens to might collapse out of existence because of backlash. Half its user base might flee overnight, say, oh shit, and they'll delete their accounts to try to protect their personal info. The site then collapses, its stock collapses. In the future, they might have more safeguards in place and prevent it from happening, or if it does, people will understand, hey, no, it was a rogue employee or something, it's not routine, we're doing our best. But the first site that happens to, and it'll probably be Twitter, just because it seems to be a leaky ship, the leakiest of the ships. I think it collapses it out of existence. I hope the people at Gab have a contingency for such an eventuality in which they can quickly obtain new server space because they're going to need it. Now, not a joke, not even really a prediction, just an interesting theory about how human awareness and political movements really work. But yeah, I'm not surprised. Are you surprised that Google has a bias? And here, I'm using a Google product. I still use Gmail, although I do have others. And I use YouTube. I did stop using Google search, mainly because it's so manipulated that Bing is now more accurate, and I prefer the accuracy. I use Bing or Start Page generally. People keep saying DuckDuckGo is so great now, and fuck DuckDuckGo, or Ecosia, or all these others. I'm going to use Bing and Start Page collectively. The only thing I'll turn Google back on for really is its map service, because Bing's maps, it's a little bit less functional, I've noticed. And I know Yahoo has theirs. Actually, Yahoo is the best, but Yahoo as a company is not much better and may not exist much longer. Microsoft is doing just fine, so not a problem. That's about all. Peace out.